Remember to hit the subscribe button for our Exoconscious Humans YouTube channel and turn on notifications too. That way you'll never miss a new video and you'll always get the latest programs. Our Substack brings you the work of the Exoconscious community. It provides information about contact, craft, consciousness, and more. You can join our Substack for free, or for just $8 a month, you can join our monthly coaching group. Meeting every third Saturday, in the coaching group you will find new friends, discuss topics that interest contactees, talk about UFOs, orbs, and disclosure. All right, let's dive into today's video.
As an introduction, as I said, I'm going to zoom out for a wider view of disclosure today, kind of an eagle-eye perspective, and look at four main disclosure sectors and how they cooperate or knot up and cause problems for each other. And I'm going to examine how there may be at cross purposes with this knotting and actually impeding the disclosure process. Potential knots or impediments are exposed through questions that are never asked of the disclosure movement and questions that deserve answers. Imagine, if you will, there are four braids. So this image that I have up is actually something that's called a Bowen knot, Bowen. So the Bowen knot is something that they use in Europe to describe a place of cultural significance. And I would submit that disclosure is really cosmically significant. So the Bowen knot is a perfect image to start to think about what disclosure means. And what happens in this Bowen knot is that there's four strands, and that these strands merge and separate as kind of waves and different forces, but the braid holds all these 4 points together, and that's actually what forms the strength and the power of the ET presence and the human story around it. The bigger picture disclosure I'm going to talk about today is, number one, material science, number two, transhumanism, number three, cosmic changes, and number four, exoconscious humans. These first two strands are material science and transhumanism. And those are really the forces of globalism, corporate control. We've been talking about military, government, artificial intelligence. And then the next two strands are exoconsciousness and cosmic changes, which signify individual independence and kind of an internal subjective force that happens. Like I was sharing what happened to me. I got moved to Dayton, Ohio. That was a subjective experience for me. So cosmic changes as well as exoconsciousness are really talking about internal. Material science and transhumanism are more talking about external. These four forces are easily pulled apart, and a lot of confusion comes from this being pulled apart, but each also propels the whole. So if you can imagine these four forces as a moving and a pliable, alive, conscious substance, that they complete each other, they overlap, they cooperate, but each strand has its own needs and power, and I would say cultural perspective. So as a result, the disclosure picture of ET contact can look more like a massive tangled knot rather than a unified interactive form. And I think we need to commit to perceiving both the tangled knot and the cooperative braiding if we're to move into an expansive vision of the future. So the material science strand, we've talked a lot about the Age of Disclosure movie today. And the material science form really resides in universities, the military, intelligence, government, mainstream news, and of course, MUFON. So many mainstream ufologists still maintain the material view of UFOs, that it must be and include a potential national security threat, now comprised of random blips or an unidentified craft on a telescope or a radar. And now these blips are becoming what we could see as secret corporate classified programs. So if there's no threat, then there's no disclosure. But that's a compromised message, increasingly knotted by the opposing budgetary needs of counterintelligence, government, the military, and corporations. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how these budgetary economic forces cause knots to happen. So one of the people that really highlight this material science strand, I think, and represent it is Avi Loeb. He believes that data collected from his microscope on top of Harvard University equals material disclosure. I did a Substack on Avi Loeb. Avi Loeb has a very, very interesting background. He was actually part of the Israeli Talpoit program, which is equivalent to what's called the Jason program in America. So the Jason program, I worked with some Jason scientists when I worked with Dr. Mitchell. So the Jason program, when you're brought into that, you're given a different curriculum than other people at universities are given. You're given different subjects, you're given different faculty members, you're given a higher level of knowledge. And the Talpoit program that Avi Loeb was in was also part of this material science at a higher level. Interestingly enough, in the mid 80s, he got his PhD in plasma science. So at that point, I don't know of any plasma programs or plasma science degrees. We were just kind of getting into quantum science at that point. So he gets a PhD in plasma science, but he also gets pulled into Ronald Reagan's Star Wars program. So the Star Wars program is really the precursor to Lockheed Martin Space Fence, is the precursor to what Trump talks about as the Golden Dome. So Avi Loeb was working on Space Fence, Golden Dome technology back in the 80s. That's really where material science is going. It's my opinion, looking at Avi Loeb, that what he's probably doing is he's gathering data to build autonomous space vehicles. I live in Phoenix, Arizona now, and we have a lot of Waymo cars. So Waymo cars are Google cars that drive without anybody in the driver's seat. So a lot of college kids use them. They go on like short trips to the bars or clubs or to their friends or to class or whatever in Waymo cars because they're not very expensive and they don't have a driver. So Waymo cars were developed by amassing enormous amount of data that over years, these Waymo cars would drive around with a driver collecting data on the roads in Phoenix. And then all that data was put into these autonomous vehicles. I think the same thing is actually happening in space right now. I think that what Avi Loeb and different people that run these radars and labs and telescopes, what they're doing is they're filling the data bank so that we can have a more effective autonomous space vehicles that are part of Trump's Golden Dome. So one of the things I think we need to do with material government disclosure is I think we need to ask some hard questions. We all say, oh, we want to release all the files. We want to know everything that's happened with ET source craft, with back engineered craft, but we don't really ask the question of, and then what? And then what's next? One of the things that's never really asked of the people that testify in Congress or the people that make age of disclosure or an Avi Loeb is, are you okay with corporations owning ET source patents? Is that okay with you? No one really fleshes out that question because if the corporations own the patents, it doesn't matter how many military whistleblowers you bring forward, the corporations still own the patents. The military doesn't own them, the corporations own them. Another question I think we need to ask is, as a material government disclosure person, a whistleblower, are you okay to move tech from corporations into the executive or the legislative branch? Deb was just now talking about what would happen if Trump became the disclosure president. Is this okay with you to take a patent, to take an engineering away from a corporation and put it in and lodge it in an executive or legislative branch? No one ever really talks about that because the president oversees the military. So if you move the ET tech into the military, well, then automatically the president, of course, the way our Constitution's written, have oversight of that because it's part of the military. Is that okay with you? Another question I would ask of material government disclosure people is, are you okay with global surveillance, monitoring, profiling, and predicting human behavior? So one of the things that came out of Trump's press conference yesterday about Maduro, I think it was, I'm not sure if it was the General Kane or who it was, but someone was saying we knew when Madeira walked his dog, we knew what clothing he wore, we knew when he went to bed, we knew what his health was like, we knew who he talked to. That is global surveillance. And all of that was possible because of satellites. What's your guardrails around global surveillance? What's your guardrails around that? So if you're going to be a person in disclosure and you're going to be supported by Peter Thiel, for example, I've got another really good Substack on Peter Thiel and what his background is. If you're looking at that because he's building out the global space surveillance system, is that okay with you or not? The next thing that I think that we need to ask the material disclosure people, and nobody ever brings it up, especially because the CIA is just so heavily involved in disclosure right now. David Grush told dark journalist Daniel List that Grush couldn't talk to List because Chris Mellon, CIA, ran the disclosure project, and he didn't have permission to talk, to go on the show. What did CIA do? They ran the MK Ultra mind control programs. The CIA works in lockstep with DARPA to bring brain to computer technology. So as material government disclosure people, as whistleblowers, are you okay with this exponential AI leap into MK Ultra mind control programs and brain to computer harnessing of human consciousness? Nobody asks questions like this of the people. And finally, will disclosure be abandoned and secrets hidden? I think that's really an important question nobody likes to ask. I think it's pretty obvious right now that the general public are tired of disclosure. They don't really pay too much attention to it. I know that the sale of Age of Disclosure kind of went south. Maybe when Spielberg has a new movie, it'll pick back up. And it's interesting because Lou Elizondo already set the stage for disclosure being abandoned. In 2021, he told Richard Dolan in an interview that he hoped to destroy ufology as we know it. The direct quote from Lou Elizondo in 2021 to Richard Dolan was, "Go ahead. I mean, waste your money. If you want to waste your money and, watch some dude drop flares off an airplane, I don't know what to tell you. I'll say this, and I don't mean any respect to anybody here in this audience, okay? But this topic has been fraught with fringe and conspiracy theories for a long time. Gee, I wonder why." This is why I said one of my hopes is to destroy ufology as we know it. And what hopefully coalesces afterwards is a pure scientific humanitarian effort to seek the truth, right? And stop telling people a false narrative, but seek the real truth behind what is. I'm not sure what Elizondo's doublespeak means other than he's asking for a way out of ufology's collapse, to enter into some kind of purified scientific material disclosure state of UAP knowledge, and the purer the better. So voila, any difficulties disappear, no questions are answered, no knots are untangled. Second one's a transhumanist strand. People follow my work. I've been studying transhumanism for years. I really got into it when I was working for Dr. Edgar Mitchell in Washington, D.C., and people started dropping information about transhumanism on me. And I was like, you're kidding me, right? I could already see what was going to be unfolding for us today. And 2026, we're living right into it. I don't know, Elon Musk today on X was saying that we're in the singularity already, whatever that means. So the transhuman strand is tightly woven through covertly within the UAP material through artificial intelligence. So transhumanism equals artificial intelligence. So transhumanism is a perspective that future advancements of the human species must be achieved through technological enhancements and or extension. So when I was talking earlier about the professor at Wright State University that had people up and walking with a computer linked into a computer. One girl walked across the stage and got her diploma when she graduated. And another woman walked down the aisle with her father hooked up to this device. So what we're looking at is these different devices actually not corded to a computer, but actually inside the individual as a computer chip. Once again, an extension. At the core of transhumanism is the development of a human technology to hybrid. And that's kind of what they were talking about with Michael Schmidt. When were these beings in the craft? Were they beings? Were they hybrids? Were they robotics? Were there some kind of chemical, biological, or biologic beings? What were they exactly? And that's part of transhumanism, to move to humans into this technological hybrid. In our culture today, actually, ordinary people now perceive themselves as human technology hybrids. And they live a very robust second life, metaverse life, a la virtual reality goggles, video games. They experience their artificial transhuman feats on a screen or on goggles on their face. While their physical body may not attain hero status, they live vicariously through their data inspired virtual twin. The virtual twin thing comes up a lot in disclosure discussions in Hollywood, like the Avatar movie. Your virtual twin or your quote avatar is not a blue bean. It's not this being that's this biological that's going to be created. What it is, it's just a bunch of data that is put onto a blockchain, and that becomes your digital identity. It's literally a digital identity. It's nothing romantic. It's nothing flesh and blood. It's just all digital information. And it kind of goes back when Madeira was captured. What they did, without saying, was they created a very robust digital identity of Madeira before they captured him. So interestingly enough, the digital identity started at Purdue University. And one of the professors, Chatterverde, he spent 20 years now building what's called the Sentient World Simulation, SWS, Sentient World Simulation. And the whole project was put together to be able to, what now I think he's probably engineered a digital twin for every person on Earth today. So you probably have a nice, robust digital identity out on a blockchain somewhere that is you. And the interesting thing about that transhumanism in the digital identity is that when you get sick in the future, the diagnosis will not come from your physical body. The diagnosis will come from your virtual twin, from your digital twin on the blockchain, because that holds all your information and that will be tapped in by your doctor. When you go to apply to a university or to an educational institution, you will not physically be applying to the institution. Your digital identity will be tapped, read, synthesized, probably by an AI program, and then that will determine whether you're accepted or not. So it's going to be an all pervasive situation. So if you would have a psychological or emotional problem, they would not sit across from you eye to eye and say, what's going on? What do you need? In fact, they would look at your digital emotional profile on that blockchain and diagnose you according to that. So it's very, very comprehensive. All of us have it, and we need not romanticize it through some movie like Avatar. I would like to say probably the most effective AI disclosure person is Gary Nolan. Yesterday, Gary Nolan came out and said that disclosure isn't working and that now he thinks we need plan B. So, plan B disclosure is that we don't need government anymore. So, we don't need government. So, no more government hearings, no more government education, no more talking to people in different levels of state and local and national government, but he's ready to move into Plan B disclosure that doesn't need a government. So just looking at who Gary Nolan is, he's, of course, a professor at Stanford, but he was also very heavily involved in working for the CIA with Havana syndrome. Havana syndrome is people that were in different embassies throughout the world, especially I think it started in Havana, Cuba, where it was first publicly identified. I'm sure it happened way before that. In Havana, Cuba, they were struck by this electromagnetic waves that affected their brain and made a lot of people ill, mentally ill, physically, psychologically ill. One of the best people to read on this, Havana syndrome, is a doctor named Michael Burr, Ber. He's got a Substack. He's very well informed on that. So Gary Nolan was brought in by the CIA and works for the CIA. And what happens, he was examining people who were experiencers and were near craft, what happened to their brain. Gary was also very, very highly involved with the mRNA gene technology, best friends with Dr. Fauci. So Gary's very, very much of a transhumanist. So there's three branches of transhumanists that we need to be aware of. There's the genetic engineering. So that's what I was just talking about with the vaccines, with the CIA, with the brain to computer implants, mRNA gene technologies. All of this is part of genetic engineering, synthetic biology that's happening. The next one is, of course, geospatial or geoengineering, and that's this artificial space fence that I talked about, or geoengineering that's going to happen for the Golden Dome. All of this is part of transhumanism, satellite arrays, HARP. I just want to add that just to make people aware. So Trump wants a missile defense with the Golden Dome over the United States. He'll probably extend it down into South America and up into Canada and Greenland and Mexico. Other countries have these golden domes also. They just have different names for them. Of course, Israel has the Iron Dome. Taiwan has something called the T-Dome missile defense system. Italy has a missile defense system, and they call it the Michelangelo defense system. So the globe is probably going to start looking like this array of these missile defense umbrellas that go up all over the globe, all over the planet. So planetary umbrella system. And then there's social engineering that's part of transhumanism, which is the memes that we use today to steer human behavior, mind control programs, MK Ultra is all part of it. Social credit control systems, the news, the media, all that's part of social engineering. I would ask transhuman AI disclosure people like Gary Nolan, is it okay to tokenize Earth's resources and move ET tech from the corporation into government ledgers? In my Substack, Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright, I talk a lot about tokenization. This is really important to realize what's happening. So tokenizing means that you could, say, go into a national park and you could take, say, Yellowstone Park, and you could tokenize it. So you could take it and make it an entry on a blockchain ledger. So if you maybe watched A Christmas Carol, so the greedy man in A Christmas Carol, he ran like an accounting firm, an auditing firm, and he had a ledger where he would write, how much money Bob Cratchit made and how many hours he worked. Those are ledgers. Those are financial ledgers. Well, financial ledgers in ink and even typed or put out on an Excel spreadsheet, those are all going to become digitalized, and that's what's called a token. So what happens when you take Yellowstone Park and digitalize it is that you fractionalize it. So now you can sell off pieces of natural resources to multiple people. So I can give Alan a tiny little piece of Yellowstone, and I can give Neil a tiny little piece of Yellowstone, and that will be a token on their personal ledger. So first it goes into something big like BlackRock, or it could go into a government ledger. It's probably going to go into a government ledger if it's resources. So transhumans never really talk about what that means. What's that going to mean? What's that going to mean for humans on Earth when everything becomes tokenized and every resource becomes tokenized? I just want to say that this has been going on again for a long time. In the 1970s, there was a group in California that developed something called the Philo Code, PHYLO code. And the Philo Code actually was a bunch of engineers who got together and decided that they were going to put a blockchain barcode on every piece of nature. So every piece of nature already has a barcode on it. You and I probably have a barcode on us. The Philo Code in the 70s set this out. So it's been going on for 50 years now. That's part of the tokenizing of the Earth's resources, something that AI disclosure people never really talk about, and yet they're heavily, heavily involved in it. Do transhuman AI disclosure people support ET tech from corporations to the executive treasury or the Fed? Once again, that's what the tokenization is going to be. Who's going to run the token blockchain? Is it going to be the executive branch, the Treasury, or is it going to be the Fed, or is it going to be Congress? Who's going to run this? And nobody talks about it, and nobody asks the question. But yet, if you're going to disclose not only Earth's resources, the tokenization is going to also move into space. So they're going to be tokenizing large portions of the moon, large portions of Mars, wherever they've been moving out into space, an asteroid. All this will be tokenized and moved into a digital economy. And yet, disclosure needs to talk about this. Does a transhuman AI disclosure person support the establishment of smart tech-controlled cities? Smart tech-controlled cities are already in existence in the world. So smart cities are based on the belief that it's called the Dark Enlightenment. A man named Ian Davis goes into it. Smart tech-controlled cities, as part of the Dark Enlightenment, is the whole idea that humans no longer run government. So all of this Democrat versus Republican, all of this racial divisiveness, all of this political divisiveness that's happening today, one of the forces behind that is the establishment of smart tech-controlled cities. So people get so tired of government not working. Government doesn't work with the Epstein files. Government doesn't work with all the fraud that they're turning up. Government doesn't work for disclosure. Let's get rid of government and let's just have Doge AI come in and run everything. That's how smart cities are going to operate. Our transhuman AI disclosure people, is it Gary Nolan? Is he in favor of that or not in favor of that? I don't know. Nobody ever talks about it. Who's going to control the technology? If you're interested in AI, one of the best people to read is a man named Gary Marcus, Marcus. He invented the software for Uber. And one of the things he goes into deeply, he's got a Substack, is what's going on with who controls the technology, who makes the guardrails. Are transhuman AI disclosure people talking about or wondering about, or are they just kind of going to let it unfold? So who's going to control the technology also goes into who's going to control the ET technology. And will disclosure be abandoned for AI elite control, which goes again into the whole dark enlightenment. So dark enlightenment's called an occult inversion. Enlightenment's light, but then you call it dark. So it's obviously has some occult underpinnings to it. The next thread or the next strand in the bow and knot that I think is significant. So we've had material science, we've had transhumanism, and I think the third strand that's of primary importance is planetary cosmic changes. So I believe that cosmic changes accelerate conscious advancement. It's as though the cosmic changes cooperate with human transformation. These climate changes include coronal mass ejections, we call them CMEs, solar winds, solar storms, planetary movements, all of this happening with the sun. And the sun's our enemy. We need to block the sun out. It's coming from globalists at this point. That's an experiment in naivete. The sun's way too powerful for them to ever block it out. So I believe that all of these images that we're getting from the sun, all of these coronal mass ejections, auroras, solar winds we talk about, I think they really awaken our body and our being, and our consciousness gets magnified by this. And we do begin to see multidimensionals, extraterrestrials, and angelic beings. So we're basically internally, again, subjectively, internally awakening to a host of outer forces internally working on us. Why is this knowledge coming out now? Well, if you look at it historically, before the 1980s, humans really had very limited access even to astrology. The original astrology charts probably came from the Dendera zodiac on the ceiling of the Temple of Horus in Egypt. So there were ancient rulers, priests, and wealthy elite, and they hired their astrologers, which is very timely right now because we're going into the season of what in Christianity is called the Epiphany. So the Epiphany is where the three wise men came from the East and visited the Christ child. So who were these wise men? Well, of course, they were astrologers. But the people that had the astrologers work for them were the generals, the rulers, the political forces, the wealthy elite, the secret occult schools. They all had astrologers. Common people, not so much. But in the 1980s, astrology became available to everyone due to the internet, probably more the late 1980s. With advanced software, anybody can create a chart online. They can read their own astrological influences. And I think that this is one of the main thrusts of into cosmic consciousness for people because they look at the stars and they look at the constellations in a totally different way because of that. So if you combine astrology with scientifically sophisticated telescopes and radars, humans are looking out into space all the time now, and that's affecting who they are. When I worked with Dr. Edgar Mitchell and lived in Washington, D.C. as his representative, I went to visit the Hubble Space Telescope one day, and the head mathematician, Mario Livio, took us around and showed us different places. And we came down this big room filled with those metal library shelving that you see in offices, old office furniture that was metal. And I looked down one of the aisles of these metallic metal library features, and down at the end of one of the rows was a man sitting at what looked like to me like a IKEA table. Quite frankly, it looked like an IKEA desk, and he had a small computer in front of him with a screen. And I looked at Mario Livio, and I said, "What's that guy doing? What's he doing down there?" And Mario Livio looked at me and he said, "Oh, he's colorizing space." He said, "The space images from Hubble come to us black and white, grainy, gray, dull, boring." And he sits there and makes it have color and bring it alive. So I think the colorizing of the space that we're seeing via computers is something that's also affecting our cosmic consciousness. I think another important person in cosmic consciousness and in planetary changes is Susan Manwich. She has a Substack called IET Evolve, Everyday Earthing and Energy Wisdom. And her whole idea is something called electromagnetic neurogenetics that describes the earth changes and the electromagnetic shifts that we're going through. You can subscribe to her IET Evolve if you're kind of into this sort of thing. And she does a really beautiful, like 5 to 8 minute podcast that's part of her Substack. And she talks about for the day what's happening on Earth, what's happening with the sun, what's happening in the cosmos, and how does that, directly affect your energy. Does it calm you? Is it bringing you chaos? What exactly is happening with that? But I think we also need to know that on Earth, these cosmic changes also need to be equated with geoengineering, what's happening to the Earth. For example, CERN's particle reactor in Switzerland, it affects not only the Earth's magnetic pole, but it also above the Earth affects the magnetosphere, and it may be affecting the sun. We really don't know. So we're dealing with a very volatile sun right now that we're moving deeper and deeper to an understanding of it, and we're simultaneously as humans developing these geoengineering situations on Earth. So if you have CERN that is actually affecting the Earth's magnetics, that's affecting the magnetosphere above the Earth, and it's affecting the sun, then there's no wonder that all we'd hear about is pole shift narrative and at the end of time narratives, because of course that's something that humans are aware that there's something very dynamic, not only coming from the sun, but also coming from human geoengineering. So then we come to exoconscious humans untying the knots, the 5 Ps. So I'm going to have to talk about 5 Ps today. And it's the best way to think about what exoconscious humans are doing. So exoconsciousness we define as the innate human ability. So we believe that every human possesses the innate human ability to, so not special people, not channelers, not people that have been downloaded, not people that come from, mystery school families or have been Rosicrucian for 5 generations or belong to theosophical schools or anthroposophical schools. Quite frankly, it's just a natural human ability to connect, communicate, and co-create. So connect, communicate, and co-create with extraterrestrials, multidimensionals, and spiritual beings. So we include spiritual beings because a lot of people in our community have a lot of contact with spiritual beings. That's quite common. We, as exoconscious humans, combine to create a soothing force that unbinds a lot of the material knots that we've been talking about that can begin to look at very clearly, with clear eyes and with discernment, a lot of the questions that we've been asking about material science, about transhumanism. Each strand that I've pulled, material, transhuman, exoconscious, cosmic, all of those have their own needs, their own power, or their own cultural perspectives. So, what we want to see happen is that these perspectives come into some kind of balance. All four forces will remain. It's not as though we're going to all become exoconscious and get rid of all of the material science people, or become exoconscious and get rid of all of the transhuman AI movements in the world. That's just not going to happen. We have to learn to live within this earth with all these different forces. We believe in the advancement of natural human consciousness. So, natural human consciousness would be something that could stand in harmony with transhumans. So, transhumans, as I said, believe that there needs to be a technological advancement in order to be a transhuman. We believe that natural human consciousness, natural human physical bodies are what are really going to take us into the future. And that psychic intelligence and contact experiencers are going to bring in the advancement that needs to happen to calm everything down, to untie these knots. We believe that the exoconscious body and brain nervous system is a receiver, a transmitter, and a creator of this information, and that every human receives downloads of communication and direction and uploads into the data field. Since we believe that contact is innate for all humans, we also believe that we're in a peer-to-peer relationship with our contacts. So that means that we believe that if we channel, like Kevin Briggs in our group channels the Council of Eight, or if we bring in information as an artist, Aurora is an artist that draws the Council of Eight to bring it into knowledge for us, that we're in a peer-to-peer relationship on equal footing with these extraterrestrials. So we're not really dealing with the ETs are smart and we're stupid. I mean, we don't really believe in that kind of philosophy. We believe that we share that field of consciousness with them. And as that, we're in a peer-to-peer level. First P is post-disclosure, and that's the Institute for Exoconsciousness. We are a post-disclosure group. So a lot of what's going on in government and the hearings that are happening and different whistleblowers that are coming forth, we believe that as contactees, that we are post-disclosure. A lot of this is people needing to catch up, important work that needs to be done on a political, sociological, film level. Steven Spielberg's new movie come out, books like Dan Brown's Secret of Secrets, but as contactees, we're post-disclosure. The second P, Planetary Constitution by the Institute for Exoconsciousness. We, the people of planet Earth, in order to form a more perfect interplanetary global union.
Establish justice.
Ensure domestic tranquility.
Provide for the common defense.
Promote the general welfare.
And secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity as a human race.
Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States.
Our planet Earth. Whereas number 1,
natural human consciousness is a fundamental and precious right of all humans and embodies the inalienable human rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of health and happiness.
2, all humans have the inalienable right to protect their consciousness from spiritual, energetic, physical, or environmental influence or interference from humans and non-human entities.
3, non-human entities, both natural and artificial, have historically and currently interact with governments and individuals of the human race on planet Earth.
4, humans have the ability and intention to explore outer space, including other planets, moons, dimensions, and celestial bodies.
5, space exploration increases the likelihood of increased interactions with unknown types of species of non-human entities.
6, encounters with non-human entities raise important issues for the future of the human race, including intergalactic communication, independence, negotiation, governance, diplomacy, technology, trade, ownership, protection, interference, and consciousness.
7. Many humans known as contactees and experiencers are experiencing direct contact and communication with non-human entities.
The term exoconsciousness has been created to describe this unique form of communication. It includes, but is not limited to, co-creation with non-human intelligences, telepathic knowledge, spaceship piloting, predictions of global warfare and environmental issues, medical healing, DNA alterations, and interdimensional and intergalactic exploration.
Number 8, the United States government and other governments have engaged in a long-term campaign to hide black budget programs, exclude the general population from its knowledge of non-human interactions, and discredit claims made by contactees and experiencers, all in an effort to maintain maximum security about non-human interactions with humans.
Now, therefore, we declare 1. Contactees and experiencers must be included in human interactions with non-human entities on behalf of governments of planet Earth.
2. Contactees and experiencers can communicate with and thereby gain a better understanding of non-human interactions, capabilities, and plans than traditional government space programs or existing human technologies. 3.
The inclusion of contactees and experiencers in government discussions and interactions with non-human entities will reduce the likelihood of planetary conflict, war, and destruction, and increase the likelihood of accurate communication, mutually agreeable goals, peaceful cooperation, and interspecies respect.
On September 20th, 2024, at 8:00 p.m. Eastern Time, the Planetary Constitution was signed by Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright, PhD, founder and director of the Institute for Exoconsciousness, Nancy Duterte, Esquire, co-director of the Institute for Exoconsciousness, Linda Martouche, Contact and Consciousness Advisor, Institute for Exoconsciousness, Susan Manwich, MS, PhD candidate, New Energy Advisor, Institute for Exoconsciousness. Basically, just to go back to the planetary constitution. So what we're saying there is, as we move into space, and as I've been talking about the Golden Dome and these different space structures, autonomous space vehicles, moving into different planets for exploration, these dark programs, if they don't involve extraterrestrial experiencers, they're going to miss out on an opportunity, because we have been communicating with these beings, these intergalactic extraterrestrial beings, as well as multidimensional beings. Experiencers could be a pathway for peace and mutual understanding, as opposed to war and attack and missile defense. Third P is a plasma course. We're going to be offering a plasma study course. I think plasma science, going back to Avi Loeb. So Avi Loeb got a PhD in plasma science. We've been through 20 or 30 years now of quantum science. I think what we're going to be moving into next is really an understanding on the citizens level of plasma science, and we want to make that possible. Plasma is involved in orbs, light beams, crop circles, space weapons, energy, different energy systems, and DNA. It's interesting that people are following these data centers that are being built that are supporting the artificial intelligence structure of transhumanism. So they're an extraction technology, actually. So these data centers that are being built to house all the digital information that they're compiling are extracting a lot of water as well as a lot of energy. So here in Arizona, where we don't have a very robust water table, to say the least, for example, they've been building data centers in Arizona. We're one of the primary places for data centers. And ironically, let's go back to our early comments about Dayton, Ohio. Ohio and Columbus, Ohio is the second place that these data centers are being built, primary centers. So Arizona, Ohio. What's happening in Arizona is that as they come online, fissures and big cracks are appearing in the actually in the land of Arizona, because the water table, the little bit of a water table that we have, is being severely depleted. So people are aware of it, but Trump came out about a week or two ago talking about tri-alpha energy. So tri-alpha energy is actually plasma energy, plasma fusion energy. And people are aware a world-renowned plasma scientist was killed about the same time that Trump came out and talked about that. He was shot at the same time as a big university shooting happened, like one of the Ivy League schools. At the same time, this MIT plasma physicist was also killed. So what's going to happen because of these data centers needing such incredible amounts of energy, it looks to me like we are going to hear more and more in the coming years about plasma science, about plasma fusion, especially about plasma energy, because you're going to need an alternative energy source to run these data centers. Solar energy, coal, nuclear, you can run them on nuclear, of course. That's probably going to become the doorway, I feel, for zero point energy, plasma fusion, and all of that. Also, inside our body is plasma. So our DNA is plasma. We're plasma beings. We're actually plasma light beings. And we're going to be studying that. If you want to join us in that study, just join our Substack. We have a coaching group, part of this also. So we're just going to have a year about learning about plasma. It's going to be a collaborative learning situation. It's the cheapest course out there. It's $8 a month to join the course. So you can apply at RebeccaHardcastle-Wright.substack.com as part of that. I think plasma science is going to be one of the more exciting things that we learn about as humans in the coming years. The fourth P is prevention of weapons in space. We work with Carol Rosin, the people in China and Russia and the UN that she put together for the Treaty for the Prevention of Weapons in Space. This ties in again to the Golden Dome for America, this layered defense, early detection. Who's going to lay the guardrails down? Who's going to have control over it? Who's going to monitor it? Like, we all belong on this globe. We all belong on this planet Earth. And preventions of weapons in space, I think, is something that we need to move toward as an experiencer group. Fifth P is psychic advancement. We talk a lot about psychic advancement. We have a group that meets monthly, and we also have a group that meets weekly. And also, every Friday, I publish something called Moving Forward Friday, updates for insights for a post-disclosure future. There's a lot of consciousness, psychic advancement that I put into these weekly Moving Forward Fridays, as well as all of the Substacks that we publish. Just quoting from our most recent Substack, the turbulence we are experiencing globally today is like a churning sea of consciousness. Sediment from the bottom is being carried to the surface as waves plunge below. Quote came from Nancy Duterte, the co-director of the Institute for Exoconsciousness. So how do exoconscious humans navigate into the 2026 new year churn? If you are psychically sensitive, you sense the churn, the now visible sediment from the bottom. The churn awakens and sharpens your navigation abilities. The churn pulls you further below and tosses you farther above than you've ever been, down into the core of the earth and above into cosmic consciousness. Churn reorients you and provides opportunities to leverage your advanced human abilities. I'm going to read that again. Churn reorients you and provides you opportunities to leverage your advanced human abilities. In 2026, we set our intention and take strong strokes into the churn. We take strong strokes into the churn, birthing abilities, co-creations. Our shift to exoconsciousness is a global co-creation phenomenon, bringing inventions and innovations to the fields of science, education, art, space, and spirituality. It sounds big. It is. You can join our future with our website that has all of the people that are a part of our exoconscious community. I just want to say that I'm giving this presentation, but this is a community involvement, and you'll find the community at exoconscioushumans.com. We have weekly coaching. We also have a monthly coaching through our Substack. And we also have an Exoconscious Humans YouTube where you can meet a lot of the people who are part of our community. So this is my information to contact Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright at gmail.com or Hardcastle-Wright. My website is exoconsciousness.com and our community website is exoconscioushumans.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Well, what is a churn? A churn is like shaking something up.
Yeah,
Something,
the
right?
chaos. The chaos is the churn.
Yeah, yeah.
How do we start to network all these people on the edge here, like Portal to Ascension? What do you suggest?
I've been on Substack now for about a year and a half. And the thing I like about Substack is it networks everybody.
It does, huh?
Yes. And it networks them well. So I write my Substack and then I recommend other people's Substacks. If all these different groups coalesce their blogs or whatever it is that they're writing their PR
Right.
into Substack, then they could all connect with each other on Substack because Substack came out of COVID. So when a lot of people left universities or medical professions during COVID, they wanted a place where they could openly talk and have free speech about what was happening. And so that's what really birthed Substack. It allows you to read other people's writing, to see what other people are doing actively in this sphere. A lot of these social media platforms are too diluted. Any of these groups, they're on Substack, then I can recommend them and restack their Substacks. Given what's happened with congressional hearings, I think the military knows. I don't know how much the government knows. I think in many ways, the current disclosure process, it's misdirected. You need to be talking to the military. There's two places that know: corporations like Lockheed Martin and the military. I
Right.
think Intel is kind of guarding the hen house. I think that's what
Well,
they're doing. Trying to go to Congress and educate people, that's a tough thing. That's a tough thing to do. You can maybe pull out, one or two people, but even then, I mean, you guys know, you spent years reading books, interviewing people. You know how long it takes to really understand what's happening. I
Yeah.
don't know. I would target military and I would target high level corporations.